Hi, everybody. I'm Bryan Duffy, and welcome to another edition of 19 Newsmakers. We're very excited about this digital streaming show and podcast where we are bringing people in and having an in-depth conversation with people who are really making the decisions, really helping to shape policy that is affecting our future and our present here in Cleveland and in Northeast Ohio. So today we are very pleased to be welcoming in Bryan Stubbs, who's the president and CEO of the Cleveland Water Alliance. And Bryan, we're going to get to what the Cleveland Water Alliance does first. We've got a pretty good idea with the water in the title, but let's start with this. How fortunate are we with what we have just to our north here in that lake?
Yeah, that's, in some ways that question is the one that kind of keeps us going each and every day, and that we're very fortunate. People don't realize we're sitting here on more than 20% of the world's fresh surface water, and the stress and water stress in particular globally, but here in the United States, you think of what's going on in Texas and Arizona and parts of California are always water stress. They don't have enough water. Here we are sitting on a major asset globally. So we're really lucky. And, we wake up every day saying shame on us if we can't figure out how to harness this for the betterment of our communities.
Right, and that's what your job is right now as the president and CEO of the Cleveland Water Alliance. What is the Cleveland Water Alliance? What do you do?
Well,
I know you could go on for 20 minutes.
Bryan, how much time do you have?
Right.
Look, at our core, we view this lens that this community can walk and chew gum at the same time, meaning we can commit to this amazing water asset, keeping it clean, keeping it healthy, while growing our regional and local economies. So our work is to figure out what that means. So in many cases, look, you think of a healthy economy, manufacturing, let's take that. You know what the number one chemical input is on anything we manufacture?
Water.
Water, H2O. It underpins everything that we build and do. And of course, anybody just pick up any headline today and see how much water it takes to create a semiconductor, an EV battery,
right.
Of course, data centers, hot topic, and we don't have to go into that,
right.
But happy to as well. So, underpinning all that to grow new technologies, new innovations to serve that part of the industry that underpins billions, if not $1 trillion worth of our regional Great Lakes economy.
Right, and that's why we have to take care of the resource first and foremost.
Well, starting with, if you don't have healthy water, you don't have healthy humans.
Right.
And then after that, it's like, if you want a healthy economy, we need healthy water. So we must take care of it. Look, again, 21% of the world's fresh surface water. Nobody can build that anywhere else in the world. So we have that. We better be good stewards.
Right, and we're going to talk about where the lake is from a health standpoint here in just a little bit. What I want to do right now is talk about what CWA has done and developed Lake Erie as the largest digitally connected freshwater body of water in the world. What does that mean? I'm asking you a lot of questions. What does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah, so, going back about 8, 9, 10 years ago, I was a little frustrated in terms of, our region had been a little bit left behind in being a smart and connected city. Columbus was kind of beating us up on that, and I said, okay, wait a minute, slow down. What if we turn one of the 5 Great Lakes into a completely smart and connected Great Lake to improve management actions, management decisions? So what we did is we started building out, first of all, the telemetry, which is a fancy word of saying in many people's homes, they have Wi-Fi, and they have what's known as a mesh system. They may have a router with a couple satellites, and every device in their home feeds into that. We took a version of that and built that over 8,000 square miles. So pretty much all of the Ohio portion of Lake Erie and up to watershed, so that we could install sensors, innovation technology to know water quality in real time. Never existed.
Right.
We were still sending people on a little kayak, go out into the middle of the lake, take their boat to the middle of the lake, grab a water sample, cork it, take it back, throw it in their truck, eventually take it back to their lab, maybe run the analysis of that, upload that into a spreadsheet. Then sometime over the winter, maybe take all of those spreadsheets that everybody else has done and say oh, how's our water health today?
Right.
So the Smart and Connected Great Lakes allows our managers of the water to have real-time information. Again, never been done before at this scale. This is the largest freshwater instrumented body in the world.
And that real time is what is really important there, because you've got that data, and now it's old when there's people out on those kayaks.
Yeah, that's right.
Real time's helping Cleveland Water in the metro parks.
Yeah, well, I always love our friends at Cleveland Water who went down this road with us early on. And, the idea of, they've always got challenges. What kind of water is coming into their intakes? And if you don't know, once that water hits the intakes, it's in your system, and you're suddenly rushing to be like, okay, the pH level is different today. We need this sort of treatment, or it's oxygen-starved water today. We need that kind of treatment. Too late. It's already in your system. People are sometimes being called in at 2 a.m., being like, we just got hit with a crazy water reading. We need to come in and treat it. Then there's a whole supply chain component. So, by doing this, they have as much as a 3-day, kind of a lag time ahead of knowing what's hitting them before it hits them, so they can understand we need to be prepared for this. We need the right people in. And it's like, that's a home run. It pays for itself in the first month, just in terms of, the workforce component.
Yeah, and a million data points is what I'm hearing. Is that's an incredible
That's our
number.
base. That's our base level. We can go more, and we're going more almost every week. Just depending on the frequency that we're grabbing data. When we say real time, could we grab real time? Absolutely. But, we can arrange these to be every minute, every 15 minutes. It depends on the time of the year and what our need. We can throttle it up, throttle it down. But the baseline is over 1 million points annually of data that we've never had like this before.
It's absolutely incredible stuff. And what it's done in the meantime is turned that lake into a living test bed, so to speak, and you're drawing people from around the country and around the world to use that test bed, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. That's been like the funnest part of getting up each day. And look, when we said, okay, let's use this smart and connected, Lake Erie as a means to test and trial new emerging technologies. Imagine having a real time E. coli sensor. Doesn't exist anywhere in the world today. We're trialing those right now because people want to come here and they can benchmark, does their sensor, does their monitoring work versus all of our equipment, which is best in class. But here was the surprising part for me, Bryan, was that I knew we'd get some, national, international attention. 65% of our deal flow is international companies wanting to come here to Cleveland, trial. We have our office space up in the Midtown area, and we've got companies now that have moved here from elsewhere in the world because this test bed, this testing and trialing of the Smart Lake Erie has attracted them. They come here, they like it, they get to know us, they get to know our community, they get to know the workforce, and they stay here. So, it's an exciting program. And, at this point, we've evaluated over 1,000 technologies just in the last 5 years. So it's a waiting list at this point.
Oh, there's a waiting list.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you said.
Yeah, we're looking right now at scheduling things into 2029.
Wow. Well, that's fantastic. And you've already mentioned that it's leading to jobs. It's leading to people moving here. It's leading to people coming in to Northeast Ohio. I want to talk and touch on all of that. Our guest today on 19 Newsmakers is Bryan Stubbs. He's the president and CEO of the Cleveland Water Alliance. We'll be right back with a lot more where we touch on jobs and people coming in to the city and grants that are being written for more research right here in our community. We'll be right back.
True crime lives here. Watch Dark Side of the Land on 19 News Plus.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Brian Duffy. This is 19 Newsmakers. Our guest today is Bryan Stubbs, President and CEO of the Cleveland Water Alliance. And before our break, we were talking about this living, breathing test bed that we have at Lake Erie, the largest digitally connected freshwater body of water anywhere. And you were mentioning just how many things it can do and how valuable it is for Cleveland Water and for the metro parks and working on technologies. You mentioned somebody coming in from a foreign country to test E. coli systems. What else is there that's out there that has advanced from a technological standpoint because of the work being done in that lake?
Yeah, well, again, how much time do we have?
Right.
So I'll keep this somewhat short. But a couple that I can bring up, and one I'm really excited by is, a sensor on a chip. So an optical sensor embedded onto a microprocessing chip. it's the holy grail for our industry, meaning with a little $40 chip, we can suddenly build out the algorithms, machine learning, so that we can start to look at different parameters, by parameters like what are we trying to detect, and do this in a much more cost-effective way. So going from trialing this chip on a buoy up into the utility, all the way into the home. We're working with a major company right now to embed one of these, in a faucet, as an example. Imagine having real-time water quality in your home. Look, if my kid's in India, I can tell you exactly where she is in India, what the temperature, humidity, what the traffic patterns are, but nothing tells us what our water quality is.
Right.
This actually makes that possible. So that's, a great example. Yeah, and for us, this is a potential unicorn.
Yeah.
And in the same breath, some interesting, more industrialized technology, such as a partnership we did with Avon Lake, which is on-site generation of high concentrate hypochlorite. That's a fancy way of saying chlorine, required to disinfect both drinking and wastewater. This is a much more benign, safe way of approaching that technology. We're using salt mined from underneath Lake Erie, so it's a supply chain issue. And it also gets chemicals off the back of trains while keeping the cost to the residents static or lower. So these are sort of technologies that, on one hand, really exciting and solve for real problems that you and I, want to see solved for. On the other hand, it starts to feed into doing things better, doing things smarter, and doing things that can actually be manufactured here in the region.
And safer. We just saw this in Akron, didn't we? Isn't that the accident they had at the Akron water plant?
It is. It's a form of the same disinfection technology, but ours is much more benign from a safety standpoint, which is something that our utility, in this case Avon Lake Regional Water, really attracted them to it. But look, this was a $6 million foreign direct investment. That means we at Little Lonely Cleveland Water Alliance brought in $6 million to do a trial and a large-scale pilot that is working, and now that company wants to, say, hey, we want to manufacture this, find us a joint venture manufacturing so we can start producing these for all of North America.
Yeah. Well, that's something else, which leads me into the jobs portion of this. And we've done stories together in the past, and in the focus of some of those stories was the so-called blue economy or the water economy. And when we did those stories, it's clear that this is an emerging industry. Certainly here it's an emerging industry, but the room for growth is vast. Where are we in the so-called blue economy or the water-based economy?
Yeah, so
I know that's an open-ended question.
Well, no, it's one, getting people to realize the blue economy's always been there. It's just we never looked at it in terms of its own economic sector, and shame on us, for doing, not having done that. But the flip side is one of the fastest growing sectors globally, growing, and I'll use my economic terms, compound annual growth rates, a double digit, which is just, kind of the holy grail in terms of investment grade opportunities, venture capital. So it's a really growing sector. So we're now starting to see folks, as we talked about earlier, saying like, okay, water underpins our entire economy, and having clean water is the core to all of that, and having better technologies at clean water, cheaper, faster, there's a market for those. So we take this back to, okay, who's going to own that sector? You think of, Silicon Valley owning, semiconductors. We think of Wall Street owning finance. Well, somebody is going to own this water tech space, and it better darn well be the Great Lakes region, because we know what we're doing here. We've seen what happens when we don't treat water right. We only need to go back here in Cleveland to the Cuyahoga burning so many times over generations, and the fact that, we're making great progress in cleaning that system up. But what happened on the way of cleaning it up is incredible research institutions, incredible engineering firms. We are leading this region in terms of IP, in terms of patents for the blue economy. So it all feeds into this really dynamic growth sector. Digital water is going crazy. We just need to build those avenues so that, these companies continue to grow here. Companies come in here, not because of incentives, because this is the place to be. And, at that point you start sharing workforce, and that creates this whole, more and more jobs are being created through them. And look, these jobs are great. I can take somebody just out of high school and get them a starting salary north of $70,000. On the flip side, I've got PhDs, going crazy in terms of their demand. And again, it's one of the fastest growing sectors here regionally. It's growing faster than biohealth. It's growing faster than advanced or additive manufacturing. Those sectors get all the attention, they get the love, they get the funding. And what we've done here by creating a natural cluster is what we call this work. We're seeing growth with more limited funding in terms of infrastructure investments.
You mentioned how people are coming here from foreign countries, other parts in our country. Some places have moved their companies here because of this. Is there any way to, I know you can't put a number on it, but are we seeing real growth in Northeast Ohio and the number of people who are working in this industry? Or are we still waiting for that to happen?
No, and I really appreciate you asking. Yes, the short answer. And we're literally right now at about month 2 of a 5-month economic impact study so that we can document that at the level with the sort of rigor that's required to take that message to Columbus, and say, look, hey, Jobs Ohio, hey, Department of Development. Invest heavy. If we're leading now with limited investments, what are we going to look like if we do this correctly over the next 5 to 10, 15 years? But in the meantime, we just have all these great success stories that we can point people to. A Cleveland company, Sorbster, that's just, we literally have them presenting today, though I guess technically it's tonight there in Singapore. We got them into the coolest tech accelerator globally. This is our peer in Singapore. There's only 2 real peers, Singapore and Leeuwarden, a town that I call the Ann Arbor of the Netherlands. And us in terms of that global scale. These companies from Cleveland are growing and we're giving them access to markets. And that only creates more job creation.
Well, so if there's kids out there and parents out there, there's a little push in the water-based economy.
Whenever I'm speaking to a school, K through 12, I'm like, if you want a job for life, go into water. Try to export Cleveland water somewhere. It's not going to happen. It can't. It's fixed infrastructure.
Right. Okay, our guest on 19 Newsmakers is Bryan Stubbs. He's the president and executive director of the Cleveland Water Alliance. We've got a lot more to talk about. We'll be right back.
First Alert traffic and weather together all morning long. Stream 19 News this morning on 19 News Plus.
Welcome back to Newsmakers, everybody. I'm Bryan Duffy. My guest today is Cleveland Water Alliance President and CEO Bryan Stubbs. Bryan, let's talk about something that is very impressive from the standpoint is it's not happening anywhere else, and that's 2 grants from the National Science Foundation that you guys are involved with right now. Tell me what they are and tell me how important this is.
So National Science Foundation funds a lot of our early stage R&D in this country. And they put out some calls for what are known as innovation engines. It's getting a whole region to come together. And we've been talking about water. How do we get the whole entire Great Lakes region to come together around this topic? So in our case, we just won our year 3 through 5 tranche for what's called Great Lakes Renew. National Science Foundation Innovation Engine, $3.1 million to continue growing the impact of this testing and trialing of these test beds, except they want us to manage test beds beyond Lake Erie. They've said work with Minnesota, work with Illinois, work with Wisconsin, Michigan. So we're real excited by that. Big deal. People are making their whole careers on getting one of these. Now, there's a second one we're waiting to hear back from, and I think we're going to hear back, shortly, and maybe even, by the time this airs, we will have news. But Case Western is leading a second one that they're a finalist for called NeoSmart, and it's taking a look at manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. What does this next level of manufacturing look like? And the materials. Like, we know materials in this region. That's another strength that we have. But as part of that, again, how do we start this conversation? Manufacturing, number one input.
Water, yeah.
So they brought us in to help establish and develop testing and trialing protocols and test beds for this. So, fingers crossed, but this would be huge for this region. But I mean, I'm just blown away that, when I think back 15 years ago when we were starting this, the fact that we're part of two of these, I think we're the only organization in the country that's part of two of these. That reflects well on this region, but also, of course, on Our Lady Lake Erie.
Yeah, and it also reflects very well on the work you guys are doing, because
so, yeah.
it certainly must. And clearly, I'm not involved, but I mean, the National Science Foundation is not going to come to the Cleveland Water Alliance and hand you this kind of money unless they're pretty sure that you're going to be a good steward of that money.
Yeah, so we've always taken this view of transparency and results. So from a transparency, we went big on how our audits are completed and how we approach them early on, because we said that's a strategic advantage. If people just see wide open, we know how to manage money. We know that some of this money is public dollars. We have a higher calling to return that to the public.
Right.
In our case, we always look at this 5 to 1, 10 to 1 return for every dollar invested in us. So yeah, it is a big deal, but you've got to get the results, but you've got to do it above boards.
Right, good. Well, I'm glad you guys are here, and I'm glad you're doing that. Let's before I let you go, maybe the most important question, maybe the one I should have asked first, is how is the health of our lake right now? I know every year we've got some issues with the water quality in the Western Basin because of just how shallow it is. But how are we doing? I frame that question knowing that we're leap years ahead of where we were just 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's still work to be done, and let's take harmful algal blooms. We're kind of chasing the fact that the water continues to warm, and you talked about the Western Basin being shallower, and so it heats up faster and quicker. We're having these more kind of intense rainstorms, which causes that runoff to hit them a little more quickly. That being said, the forecast looks like about an average year for harmful algal blooms. Look, I first and foremost don't want to go back to 2014 when the Toledo system, So job number one was having systems in place so that the public is always aware of what's coming at them, and those utilities know what's coming at them so that they can get ahead of that. So we've made great progress in terms of, the Smart Lake Erie as an example, giving them that data so that they know with more warning, with more time, what's coming at them, and they can react correctly. So that perspective is going well. Now, with harmful algal blooms, a lot of it is related to nutrients. So we're in a project right now with 3 farmers, and we're working with their sludge ponds. That's my polite way of saying what they are. And working with an Ohio-based technology to electrify them to try to get the phosphates and the nitrates to settle at the bottom and not spill out into the environment. So there's a lot of good things. We're seeing the trend line going the right direction, but I'll be blunt, we still have a lot of work to be done. But you're right. Progress is being made, but a lot more progress still to be had.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part, that we're moving in the right direction, and that's what we need to continue to do. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, Bryan. We'll have you back again soon, and we'll get some updates on what exactly is going on with the Cleveland Water Alliance. That's Bryan Stubbs, the president and CEO of the Cleveland Water Alliance. That's going to do it for this edition of 19 Newsmakers. I'm Bryan Duffy. Really appreciate you watching. Don't forget, this show streams every single Monday at 6:30, and then it's available on our website. Of course, you can watch all of our past episodes, also available as a podcast. Thanks again.